I was applying for 10 news jobs. So literally, I mean, it could have gone another way. I could be doing something different altogether. And he literally went to bat for me, recommended me. The sports, and you find out a lot of this stuff later. The sports editor was still there, but it's in a different position. We became familiar over the years, but he didn't want to hire me. You know, it became clear later he did not want to hire me. The editor-in-chief said, "You're hiring me." And they basically, and we got to a point where we were really good, and he helped me and stuff, but you don't know how it's going to work out. So, get your resume in front of people. You have a friend, somebody who knows somebody, hand resume, you just don't know what's going to happen or where it's going to be. And be persistent, be ready, like it could take a while, and try and keep your hands in it while you're doing it. If you go home, call your paper or local, say, hey, you need a high school stringer. You need somebody to do something. And if not, open a website, write something. Just keep writing. Keep your hand in it. Keep doing it. The longer you're in it, the more likely you are able to get a job. In any way, shape, or form. The more current clips, the more current work, the more practice you are in your form, the easier it will be to get your job. So, just be persistent, and just realize it can take a while. I mean, all of us here can tell you horror stories about times they were out of work, times they didn't think this was going to work out, times,
Castrovince was successful. Yeah.
Right. Well, some people are just blessed. But I can look back on my life and tell you all kinds of junctures where it could have gone differently. And whether that was sometimes I made the right decision, sometimes I was just lucky. Stuff like that. So just be persistent. Be strong, and keep applying, and be open to anything. Everything you do, like I tell people all the time. Like, if you want to be a sports writer, there's, in many ways, it's better, be a news writer first. You know what I mean? Take a news job. Learn your way around news. And if you're at a place, you're a news writer, you're doing a good job, and the sports writer opening comes over, you're probably likely to get a better look than you were if you're applying from outside. And those news writing skills are stuff you will use your entire career as a sports writer in like 1,000 different ways. So don't just look for sports writing jobs. Look for news writing jobs too. They can help you a ton down the road.
I would say, once again, I go back to making sure that while you're here, you're doing the things that, make your time count. Like I said earlier, work with WWP, work with the Post. Internships are huge. I mean, you gotta have good, solid internships. You also have to do your fair share of networking. I mean, whether it be attending conferences and conventions and things like that, where you'll have a chance to meet people and rub elbows with the right folks who can and will give you jobs. And you never know where those jobs are going to come from. I told the OUABJ last night, I was meeting with them how I got my first job, and it's really kind of funny. I was at a convention, and I met a guy, and we talked for a minute, and then he saw me again later, and I was preoccupied doing something else, and he came over to me and said, hey, I want you to be my boss. But I was kind of preoccupied with what I was doing, so I was like, well, I'll meet him later. I don't even know right now. Dude said, no, come on, you come with me right now. And so he grabbed me, and I went ahead and I went with him. I met with the sports editor for 2 hours. This is the summer before I graduated from college, so this would have been like the summer of '91. Make a long story short, me and this guy, we met. I gave him my resume, my clips, and we never talked again. I never talked to the gentleman who had introduced me to his boss either. Well, that March, I get a call from the Kansas City Star. There was a sports editor, his name was Dale By. And he says to me, hey, Terrance, I have this job opening here, and I'd like to know if you'd be interested in coming to interview for it. And I was like, yeah, sure. So I go, I interviewed for the job, and I couldn't really remember the guy's name who introduced me, but I did, at some point during the interview, I said, hey, I'd like to see that guy again, because I said, the guy who introduced me to you. And so he looked at me for a minute, he said, then I brought it up again. He said, well, I didn't really want to tell you this, but you're interviewing for his job, he got fired. But I mean, but that's how I got my first job.
That's funny.
The advice to say yes to anything is really popular for young journalists, but as you guys probably know, that can get you into some sticky situations. For example, something that's going on right now, which I'm sure you're aware of, is some of the issues that journalists are dealing with in Russia. So how do you deal with those kind of uncomfortable or just inconvenient issues? And when do you draw the line where that guest might turn into a no?
Well, anyone who's covered baseball, we laugh at people who are complaining about their run in hotel rooms. Life is inconvenient, and it's messy. I think you got to have a lot of humility in this business, or in any business for that matter. I think that you got to be confident but not cocky. I think there's a fine line there, and at the end of the day, any job you're looking at, you got to know what's best for you. And I don't know about to say yes to anything, because I said no to some things that probably at a time that I wasn't in a position to say no to anybody, but I just knew it wasn't right for me. I knew I wasn't going to be in the best position to do my best effort or whatever. So it's tough, especially in this business. It can be tough to say no, but I do think that you got to know thyself. We say that a lot. So that would be my point.
I would say this for when you're talking about sticky situations and uncomfortable stuff. It was not this past fall, but the fall before I was visiting here. I was kind of passing through. Not really passing through. I made a huge detour to come in. From Cleveland to Columbus. It made no sense. But I went to the Post, and I talked to two guys there, and they were going to Penn State, that Penn State game. And they were, because the Post had no money, which is crazy for travel, they were driving through the night to State College and then driving right home, which to me is absolutely, I had more money, I was going to buy these kids a hotel room. I felt terrible. It's like unsafe. But we used to do stuff like that. We used to drive like really late to get to games. I would miss classes. I missed class, and I ended up getting a bad grade because of it. Also because I never studied. But partly because I went to Mac Media Day for basketball, men's and women's, and I skipped this class, and the guy didn't give me any breaks for it because I was working for the Messenger. So you got to be willing to do that. I've always been willing to take those kind of things. Like I had the same internship Jay did in Israel 2 years later, so I'm much younger, but it was supposed to leave on 9/12, and that was when my plane was leaving. I was packing when the planes went. My mom and I were packing my bags, and people were like, "You're not going." I went a week later, and I would have went the next day if Air France didn't unplug their website. But you got to take chances in life. You'll never. My first job was in Yuma, Arizona. In the border of Mexico and California. What's up? What? Oh yeah, it's funny. Yeah, the guy didn't get the job at Yuma. Yeah, he ended up. Now he's a big time sports writer for the New York Times. But I got the job over him at the Yuma Sun.
So that just goes to show that like any business. There's no rhyme or reason necessarily to who gets a job. I think that guy got turned down by Yuma and got a job at Newsday, right?
Daily News.
Daily News.
Now he's a huge sports writer.
So he got turned down by Yuma, and a month later is working for the Daily News. So, it's a crazy. You got to keep your head above water as far as knowing that there are so many things out of your control. And it's not necessarily, if you don't get a job, it's not necessarily because you stink or you didn't interview well. Sometimes they make bad decisions, and sometimes it's for your benefit in the long run.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think you have to know what works for you. If there's a situation that you can't leave or you don't feel comfortable with, don't say yes because you have to. That said, I think it's important to be able to, step outside your comfort zone and welcome those sort of challenges. When the foreign correspondence initiative, I always tell people when I touched down there, I remember in Jerusalem, and I'm Jewish, so I know a little bit about the culture. Touchdown in Tel Aviv, right? Touchdown in Tel Aviv. Excuse me, thank you. When I touched down, there was a bit of culture shock for me, and for a minute there, I was like, "Where in the world am I?" And I was thinking, I'm just going to come home. I remember looking in the mirror, going, this isn't good work or whatever. And I said, I remember just kind of buckling down, saying, I have to stay. I want to stay. And I remember that the Monday we went in, and I love the foreign correspondence internship for part of this reason. My first day Monday, they stuck me in a cab, sent me to Bethlehem, which is West Bank, and I'm I speak very little Hebrew. Basically, I'm thrown to a car with a guy who just speaks Arabic, who drives me with a video to somewhere, and I was just completely out of my element. But that's how you get comfortable, that's how you get comfortable with yourself, you get comfortable with what you know how to do, and you also get comfortable, you draw confidence from that. Like when I was there, I wrote a bunch of stories that I'm still very proud of. But the one thing that like people talked to me about afterwards was I covered a game. I went to Tel Aviv to cover. Miami Heat were in town. They were playing Maccabi Tel Aviv. So they sent me out to do that because I had a little bit of sports background, more than any of those people did. And I wrote the story there. The computer breaks. I just dictated the whole story basically over the phone. And the people next day were like, you would have thought, these are like the finest journalists in the world, like the most amazing journalists in the world. They're going, how did you do that? That was amazing and all that stuff. And that was when it started dawning on me going, maybe that's what I should be doing. So you have to, don't ever put yourself in a situation. If you feel uncomfortable with something, and you feel like this isn't going to work out, you don't just say yes to anything. But also be cognizant of, you're going to have to step outside your comfort zone probably at some point to be a success in this business. You can't just stick to, what you can do. You're going to have to jump into the unknown, and so, try and embrace that challenge. Don't run for it just because you're not comfortable,
I'm probably not the best person to speak on this because I took the first job that was offered to me. And 2 weeks later, I had an interview opportunity at another paper that was a better paper, and I didn't get that job. And I don't think it was because I didn't have the first job. But I always thought that the best way to get a job was to have a job. So I took the first job that was offered to me. And it was covering high schools in Washington Courthouse, Ohio. And what I did when I got that job was I decided that it wasn't going to just be high schools. So I started covering Ohio State football and basketball. And I covered Bengals games. And I covered Reds games when I could. And I covered the ATP tennis tournament down in Cincinnati. And it changed the whole feel of the newspaper. And it really helped me get me on the scene because